It's 2 a.m. The house is quiet, and my brain decides now is the perfect time to analyze a weird look my boss gave me. On Tuesday, was it the report? Was it that comment in the meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly, I'm replaying the entire day in slow motion, scanning for evidence. By 2.15, I've concluded I'm probably getting fired.
The spiral.
By 2.30, I'm mentally rehearsing the conversation, planning my exit, even picturing what it's like to pack up my desk. It's an absurd private catastrophe.
It really is.
We all know it's absurd, even while it's happening. But what's fascinating isn't just the spiral itself. It's that a part of our mind genuinely believes this 2 a.m. rehearsal is productive work.
Yes, that belief is key.
It believes that if it just thinks hard enough, long enough, and considers every possible disaster, it can somehow control the future and keep us safe. That's the illusion.
The core illusion we're talking about today.
And it's the reason why just telling yourself to stop feels like trying to yell at a smoke detector to be quiet while it still thinks there's a fire. That opening, it just hits home, doesn't it? Because we really do treat anxiety like it's some kind of mandatory research phase.
We do. Like you have to go through it.
Yeah, we genuinely believe that the rumination itself, all that agonizing, that internal drama, is actually preparation.
That it's useful. That's the illusion of productive worry.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into the psychology, the strategy, even the neuroscience behind that specific illusion.
Yeah, we've looked at quite a bit here, drawing from clinical psychology, especially work on metacognitive therapy for things like generalized anxiety disorder, but also high-level corporate strategy, complexity, decision-making.
Right.
So the mission for you listening is really to get past just recognizing stress and actually understand the cognitive machinery, the gears turning underneath that keep this cycle going.
So we're not just looking at, how overthinking affects your well-being personally, but also how it messes with strategic decisions, innovation, especially in those high-pressure jobs. How does that illusion of productive prudence, as you called it, actually sabotage performance?
Exactly. Because the core idea, really, across all this research, it isn't about the content of your worry, like, should I fix the report or am I sick?
Right, the specific what if?
Yeah. The real engine-driving pathological overthinking is about the beliefs you hold about your own thinking process, your thoughts about your thoughts.
Metacognition?
Metacognition, precisely. We need to identify that faulty architecture, the blueprint, so we can start taking it apart.
Okay, let's unpack that engine then. What the research seems to show is a really clear line between just, necessary thinking and the kind of overthinking that becomes, pathological. What's the key difference?
Well, it really centers on these two layers of worry that metacognitive therapy identifies. Layer one is what most people experience sometime. It's called type 1 worry. And that's worry focused on the content, on real world stuff like, I need to prep for this presentation, or shoot, I got to pay that bill. It's practical, mostly, maybe sometimes excessive, but it's about problem solving.
Right. So that in itself might be annoying, but it's still basically about reacting to what's happening out there.
Correct. But what really locks people into that chronic, debilitating overthinking, the kind you see in generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, that's when this self-perpetuating mechanism kicks in. It's called the Cognitive Attentional Syndrome, CAS.
CAS. Okay, that sounds kind of aggressive. Like it feeds itself. What does it actually do?
Yeah, it is a pattern. CAS involves three main things. Way too much self-focus, constantly scanning for threats like hypervigilance, and deliberately, continuously starting up that type 1 worry.
So a thought pops up.
Right, a trigger thought. And the person engages CAS. That means they zoom in on that internal trigger, and here's the key part. They actively reduce their ability to take in new information from the outside, especially information that might contradict the worry. They get rigid, stuck inside their own head.
Okay, so if I'm worrying about that look my boss gave me, CAS makes me keep replaying that meeting in my head over and over.
Yes.
And I actively ignore the fact I got a bonus last month or the company's doing fine. I'm just laser focused on potential threat data.
You're filtering your reality to only confirm the internal danger signal. But here's the crucial bit. The real linchpin holding this whole cycle together isn't even the type 1 worry itself. It's the metacognitive beliefs.
The beliefs about the worry process.
Exactly. That's what separates someone who worries pathologically from someone who just worries normally.
It's like the mind's instruction manual for how to handle anxiety.
Yeah.
And the research says these beliefs have two sides, right? kind of conflicting, but they work together.
Spot on. That's the dual nature, like in Wells's metacognitive model of GAD. The whole system gets switched on by positive meta-beliefs.
Okay.
This is the core of our whole deep dive, right? The illusion that worry is actually helpful. These beliefs sound pretty reasonable on the surface. Worrying helps me figure things out, or worrying shows I'm responsible, or maybe if I worry enough, I'll be ready for anything bad that happens.
That positive belief basically gives you permission to fire up the CAS engine. It feels productive, like you're doing something important.
It justifies the endless loop of analysis. And for a little while, it might even feel a bit comforting, like your own control. But once that type 1 worry starts cranking up the anxiety, then it triggers the second layer. And this one's more destructive, negative meta-beliefs. This is what clinicians call type 2 worry or meta-worry. It's literally worrying about the fact that you're worrying.
Wow, okay. So you're pouring gasoline on a fire you're already scared of. What do those negative beliefs sound like?
They're about the fear that the whole process is out of control and actively dangerous. Things like, my worrying is going to make me lose my mind, or if I keep worrying like this, I'm definitely going to have a nervous breakdown, or even this constant stress is going to give me a heart attack.
So the positive belief gets the engine running.
Yep.
And the negative belief makes sure you can't shut it off, because now you're terrified of the engine itself and what it might do to you. That's a perfect trap.
It is. And when you're caught in that spiral, people desperately try to cope, right? They use strategies that actually make things worse in the long run. We all do these sometimes. But for the chronic overthinker, they're habits like thought suppression, trying not to think about the problem.
Which always backfires. Don't think of a pink elephant.
Exactly. Suddenly, all you see is pink elephants. Other things too, like constantly needing reassurance seeking, asking colleagues or family over and over, was that okay? Do you think I'll be fired? Or just getting stuck in continuous thinking, that internal rehearsal loop. Or avoidance, maybe through distraction, sometimes destructive things like drinking too much.
So asking my colleague about the boss's weird look might feel like I'm solving it.
Right, momentary relief.
But it just reinforces the idea that the thought was so dangerous, I needed someone else to handle it for me.
Oh, yeah. Precisely. These safety behaviors, the research is very clear, they actively keep the distress going. So to break the cycle, we absolutely have to target those core faulty meta-beliefs.
Okay, so the job is to prove to the mind, empirically, that its two big fears that worry is uncontrollable and that it's dangerous are just wrong. Let's start with uncontrollability.
Yeah, people who worry chronically, especially with GAD, they often rate their worry as almost completely uncontrollable, like 90% uncontrollable, zero agency.
Wow.
The clinical breakthrough here is getting people to see that, yes, anxiety might feel like it washes over you automatically.
Right, the initial wave.
But worry, the thing that follows, is actually a deliberate verbal process. It's something you initiate in response to a thought. It's thinking in words.
That distinction feels really important. The anxiety might just happen, but the what if I fail, then lose my house, then I'm homeless? That part is me choosing to tell myself a scary story.
Exactly. And if it's a process you start, you can also choose not to start it or to stop it.
Right.
So the technique used to challenge this is often called the control test. It uses real-life examples to show evidence against that feeling of uncontrollability.
Okay, give us an example. How does the control test actually convince someone?
Well, the therapist might ask something like, okay, imagine you're intensely worrying about your finances, just really spiraling, and suddenly the fire alarm goes off, LUD, or your child falls and needs you right now. Would the worry stop?
Yeah, instantly. You'd react to the emergency.
Okay. Right, everyone says yes. In that moment of real crisis or just a demanding distraction, the mind automatically shifts resources. What that proves is the ability to stop worrying wasn't gone. It was just overridden by a higher priority. The choice is always there. The person has just been habitually prioritizing the internal threat simulation over what's happening right now.
So the proof is there.
Yeah.
The control switch exists. It's just a matter of resource allocation, not like a broken mechanism. So how do you train yourself to use that switch when there isn't a fire alarm going off?
That leads right into a core technique called the worry postponement technique. It's pretty straightforward, actually. When that trigger thought pops up, the what if. Instead of immediately jumping into the worry narrative, you consciously decide to postpone the act of worrying. You schedule it for later.
Schedule worry?
Yeah, like, okay, I'll worry about this for 10 minutes at 6 p.m. tonight. A specific short window.
I can hear someone thinking, but what if it's a real problem? Like a huge deadline. If I postpone worrying, aren't I just procrastinating on actual planning?
Yeah.
How do you tell the difference between toxic worry and necessary prep?
That's a great question, and it shows why the technique is smart. Worry postponement is for rumination, that endless circular thinking that doesn't actually solve anything.
Okay.
It's not for planning. If a specific action needs doing, you don't postpone the worry, you just do the action. If the thought is purely hypothetical catastrophe spinning, that's what you postpone.
Got it. So if the thought is, I need to start writing that report,
Yeah.
you go start the report. But if the thought is, what if this report bankrupts the entire company and ruins my career? That gets an appointment for 6 p.m.
Exactly. You give the worry a specific time slot, and then you just observe what happens between now and then. The goal is to notice that the thought didn't require immediate engagement to keep you safe.
And what usually happens when 6 p.m. rolls around?
Often one of two things. Either the feeling of urgency around that worry has just evaporated, or sometimes you can't even quite remember what the specific worry was anymore.
Yeah.
And just observing that, according to the clinical data, can really dismantle that uncontrollability belief. People's self-ratings can drop dramatically, like from 90% uncontrollable down to maybe 20% or less. They realize, oh, this thinking thing, it's voluntary.
That is a massive shift. Okay, let's tackle the other negative meta-belief. The fear that worry is dangerous. People genuinely think the stress will physically harm them or that they'll literally lose their minds.
Right. For the physical harm, fear, worrying about heart attacks or breakdown, we often use verbal restructuring. The therapist helps the person question the actual mechanism of harm. Okay, yes, worry raises your heart rate. It releases stress hormones like adrenaline. But what else does that?
Running upstairs, giving a presentation, riding a roller coaster, exercise.
Exactly. We consider exercise beneficial, right? The key idea is that adrenaline is meant for short-term survival bursts. And while chronic, unrelenting stress isn't good for you, the temporary spike from an acute worry episode is functionally pretty similar to, say, a brisk walk.
Okay.
We need to reframe those physical feelings, not as signs of impending doom, but as the body's protective system kicking in, even if it's a false alarm this time.
That helps put the physical side in context. But what about someone who feels like they've been chronically stressed for years? How do you address the very real concern that maybe that sustained stress actually is breaking them down?
That's fair. We explain the body's resilience and regulatory systems. While chronic stress isn't ideal, the anxiety itself isn't a direct switch for catastrophe. We can look at professions under extreme pressure, think soldiers, ER doctors, race car drivers. They operate under intense stress, sometimes even performing better.
Right.
The data suggests anxiety is a signal, sometimes a very loud one, but not inherently destructive to your ability to function or survive.
Okay. What about the fear of mental harm? The I'm going crazy or losing my mind belief. That feels like the scariest one for many people.
It often is. And for that, we can use a very direct behavioral experiment. It sounds a bit intense, but it's called the try to go crazy with worry experiment.
You ask people to try to go crazy.
In a safe, controlled setting, yes. The instruction is basically, okay, for the next few minutes, I want you to worry as hard as you possibly can. Try to worry yourself into losing control, forgetting who you are, acting impulsively. Push it to the max.
Wow. That sounds terrifying, but maybe powerful.
It's highly structured, and the outcome is predictable, which is why it's so therapeutic. People feel incredibly tense, anxious, deeply uncomfortable, but they don't lose their minds.
They can't voluntarily make themselves psychotic.
Exactly. They don't forget their name, they don't become violent, they don't lose touch with reality. The experiment proves very directly that anxiety is a horrible feeling, yes, but it's not the same as losing your sanity. That single experience, that disconfirmation, can dramatically weaken the belief that worry is mentally dangerous.
Okay, so we've tackled the negative beliefs. Worry isn't uncontrollable. It isn't inherently dangerous. But we still need to address the starting point, that positive meta-belief, the idea that worry is productive, that all this rumination is just good professional prudence.
Right, and this is where we really bridge the clinical side with, say, organizational performance. We have to draw a line between genuine prudence, which is about careful risk assessment, planning, being proactive, and toxic overthinking.
Which is more like risk aversion pretending to be thoroughness.
Exactly. And it often leads to paralysis, not progress.
And you see this a lot in leadership, right? Executive dysfunction.
Absolutely. It connects strongly to the profile of what some call the obsessive-compulsive leader. The research points out these individuals are often driven by this intense need for perfection. They confuse following the process perfectly with getting good results. So they get bogged down in indecision or procrastination because they just cannot tolerate the possibility of making a mistake. Their internal error threshold is basically 0.
Yeah, you see that with leaders who need just one more revision on the report, or demand way too much data for a simple decision, or they micromanage tiny details that really should be delegated.
Precisely. Think about a manager demanding huge, detailed daily updates on a pretty standard project. They spend more energy checking formatting than actually moving the strategy forward.
Right.
That kind of rigid thinking actually kills creativity and slows everything down for the whole team. The belief that more thinking always equals better outcomes is directly challenged by the results they get. Paralysis, not perfection.
So how do you challenge that positive meta-belief system directly? How do you prove worry isn't helping?
Again, we use behavioral experiments. We need empirical proof. One technique is the worry abandonment enhancement experiment.
Okay, that sounds like a head-to-head test. How does that work?
It directly tests the belief, worrying helps me perform better, or worrying helps me prepare. The person picks a task, maybe studying for an exam, prepping a client pitch. Then they set up 2 similar blocks of time.
Okay.
On day A, they work on the task, but they're also encouraged to really lean into the worries associated with it. What if I fail? I'm not smart enough for this, all that stuff.
Right.
On day B, they spend the same amount of time on the task, but this time they actively use those control techniques like postponement to prevent the worry.
And what's the typical outcome when they compare day A and day B?
It's often a huge eye-opener. They usually find their actual performance, the quality of the study notes, the progress on the pitch deck is either the same or sometimes even a bit better on the worry abandonment day, day B. But the crucial difference is their subjective experience. On the worry enhancement day, day A, they report feeling way more anxious, tense, mentally exhausted, and finding it much harder to concentrate.
That's the proof right there.
Oh.
The worry added a ton of stress, but 0 actual benefit to the work itself. It's hard to keep believing worry is productive when your own data shows it just makes you tired and miserable.
Exactly. It's powerful disconfirmatory evidence. Another good technique is the worry mismatch strategy. This is about systematically reviewing past worries.
Okay.
You ask the person, okay, list 5 things you worried intensely about recently, maybe for days. Then for each one, they write down, what was the catastrophic outcome you predicted and what actually happened?
Like a reality check audit on past panic.
Precisely. So maybe the worry was, I'm going to completely freeze during the presentation and get fired on the spot.
Right.
The actual outcome might have been, well, I stumbled over one sentence, paused for a second, but then I recovered fine, and nobody seemed to notice or care. By looking at this pattern, the huge gap between the predicted disaster and the often pretty manageable reality, the person starts to see that worry is actually a terrible preparation tool. It consistently dramatically blows risk out of proportion.
Yeah.
It's not prudent planning, it's just distorted, exaggerated fiction.
So the insight becomes worry doesn't predict the future. It just predicts the worst possible story about the future.
That's a great way to put it. And once you see it as fiction, that positive meta-belief, the idea that this process helps you cope or prepare, really starts to lose its grip. #tag4. Overthinking, uncertainty, and decision-making frameworks.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, but it's deeply related. One of the big psychological drivers keeping chronic overthinking going, especially in GAD, is this fundamental difficulty with ambiguity. It's called intolerance of uncertainty, or IU.
IU. That sounds like basically being allergic to the idea that you don't know what's going to happen next. That's pretty spot on. IU involves really negative beliefs about uncertainty itself, about ambiguity, new situations, things being unpredictable. It's a huge factor in keeping anxiety alive because the person feels like they need absolute certainty before they can feel safe enough to act or make a decision.
Which is impossible in most of life, right?
Yeah.
Especially in business or complex situations.
Exactly. So the overthinking isn't really aimed at solving the actual problem anymore. It's aimed at trying to manufacture a feeling of certainty, which, as you said, is a fool's errand.
And that leads to certain behaviors, right?
Yeah.
Trying to control the uncertainty.
Yes. It fuels a whole set of safety behaviors designed to avoid that uncomfortable feeling of not knowing. In a work context, you might see IU manifest as leaders who refuse to delegate because delegation means someone else might mess up, introducing uncertainty. Or, like we talked about, constant reassurance seeking, or just chronic procrastination on any decision that doesn't have a guaranteed perfect outcome.
And the paradox there is that the things they do to try and feel safe actually stop them from taking action and being effective. So how do you target IU directly?
Again, it often comes down to structured behavioral experiments. But here, the experiments are designed specifically to challenge the intolerance of uncertainty itself, not just the content of a specific worry.
Okay.
So it involves deliberately, systematically putting yourself into situations that trigger that feeling of uncertainty while actively resisting the usual safety behavior.
Like what?
So if an executive avoids delegating because they fear even a 1% chance of error, the experiment might be to delegate a small, low-stakes task, and this is crucial, consciously forbid themselves from checking up on it constantly.
They have to just sit with the uncertainty, the small risk, and see what happens.
Exactly. The goal is to gather evidence against those negative beliefs about uncertainty. A, is this uncertainty actually dangerous? And B, was my safety behavior, like checking constantly, really necessary to prevent disaster? And what's really interesting in the clinical research here is something called sudden gains.
Sudden gains? What's that? Sounds dramatic.
It kind of is. Sudden gains are these rapid, significant, often unexpected drops in IU or worry levels that happen very quickly, sometimes just between one therapy session and the next.
Wow. Not gradual improvement, but like a leap.
Yeah, a cognitive leap. And studies show that when these sudden drops in IU happen early in treatment, they're a strong predictor of long-term improvement. They actually seem to mediate the reduction in worry overall.
Why? What causes that sudden shift?
Well, it strongly supports the idea of cognitive mediation. The thinking is, the sudden gain happens when the person successfully does an experiment that just fundamentally shatters a core belief about uncertainty.
Like the delegation example, they delegate, don't check, and nothing bad happens.
Right. That experience provides such powerful disconfirmation that it causes a rapid restructuring of that core belief. And changing that belief about uncertainty then leads to this cascade of relief from the symptoms, dramatically reducing the perceived need to worry constantly.
That really reinforces the whole idea. Change how you relate to the thinking process, and the downstream symptoms change dramatically. Okay, let's scale this up. How does this problem of managing uncertainty play out at, say, an organizational level? You mentioned the Cynefin framework.
Yeah, the Cynefin framework, it's a Welsh word. It means something like habitat or context is a really useful tool for leaders and teams. It helps tackle overthinking by forcing you to match your decision-making style to the actual context of the problem.
Because we often mismatch, right?
Yeah.
Treat everything the same.
Exactly. Leaders often fail because they apply the same heavy analysis to every issue. They overthink complex problems, or, just as bad, they underthink simple ones. Cynefin sorts issues into 5 contexts based on how cause and effect work.
Okay, let's walk through them. Start with the predictable ones.
First is the simple context. This is the domain of known knowns. Cause and effect are clear, stable, everyone sees it. Think standard operating procedures, processing a basic refund, assembling a standard part.
Got it. What's the strategy?
Sense, categorize, respond. You see the situation, put it in the right bucket, and apply the established best practice. The danger here: complacency. Applying an old best practice when things have changed, or oversimplifying something that's actually more complicated.
Which brings us to the complicated context.
Right. Domain of the known unknowns. Cause and effect exist, but you need experts or analysis to figure out the connection. There isn't just one right answer, but there are several good answers. Think designing a new bridge, or diagnosing a tricky illness.
Okay.
The strategy is sense, analyze, respond. You rely on good practice and expert judgment, and this is a prime spot for analysis paralysis.
The classic corporate overthinking trap. Experts debating endlessly about which good option is slightly better, and nothing gets decided.
Absolutely. Or the flip side. Maybe the experts are so locked into their way of thinking and trained thinking that they instantly shoot down any new or unconventional idea that comes from outside their field. Leaders here have to manage the experts, push for analysis, but also for a decision.
Okay, now we move into the less predictable domains, where cause and effect aren't so clear up front. The complex context.
This is the domain of unknown unknowns. This is where most strategy lives, most innovation. Cause and effect only makes sense looking backward. You can't predict the outcome reliably beforehand.
So what do you do?
The strategy is probe, Sense, respond. Leaders have to run small experiments probes that are safe to fail. You try something, see what happens, and let instructive patterns emerge from the results.
Like the Apollo 13 example people often use. They couldn't analyze their way to a solution. They had to rapidly try things with what they had until something worked.
Exactly. That's pure emergence in action. The huge danger in the complex domain is impatience. Overthinkers or very rigid leaders hate this. They try to force order, demand a guaranteed plan before starting anything.
Which kills the learning process.
Totally. If you try to impose rigid control, you prevent those informative patterns from ever showing up. You guarantee failure by trying too hard to prevent it. You have to be willing to learn by doing, by experimenting.
Okay, and the last one. The most unpredictable.
The chaotic context. This is the realm of unknowables. Think total crisis, a natural disaster, a massive cyber attack, a sudden market collapse. There's no clear cause and effect anywhere, it's just turbulence. Immediate action is needed.
What's the strategy here?
Act, sense, respond. The first priority is just to act decisively to establish some kind of order, stop the bleeding. This is where clear, top-down, command and control leadership is appropriate initially. Analysis has to wait.
And the danger?
Two main ones. Acting too slowly, not establishing order quickly enough. Or, the flip side, staying in that command and control mode for too long after the immediate crisis is over and things have stabilized back towards complex or complicated.
Exactly. So Sinfin teaches that real prudence isn't about endless analysis. It's about adaptive leadership. Being able to read the context quickly and shift your decision-making approach to match. If you try to tackle a complex problem with a complicated, analysis-heavy approach, you'll just overthink yourself into paralysis. Okay, we've seen how overthinking is unproductive psychologically and how it gums up decision-making strategically. Now let's get down to the brain level. What does this constant mental churn, this internal disaster movie, actually do to our ability to think clearly, be creative?
Well, the sustained internal stress that comes from chronic overthinking has a direct, measurable impact on our higher-level thinking skills. What the research highlights particularly is that social evaluative threats, the fear of being judged negatively by others.
Like worrying about the boss's look.
Exactly. That, combined with feeling like the stress is uncontrollable, is especially damaging to creative performance and flexible thinking.
So that brings us right back to that 2 a.m. scenario. Worrying about the boss, maybe losing my job, that's a social evaluative threat. And the act of worrying about it is actively hindering my ability to figure out what, if anything, I should actually do about it.
That's precisely the mechanism. When we're under that kind of acute, uncontrollable stress, the brain literally performs a radical reallocation of cognitive resources. It's described by the triple network model. Resources get pulled away from high-level thinking to prioritize immediate threat response.
Okay, let's break down those three networks. Which one gets boosted?
That would be the salience network, SN. Its activity ramps way up. The SN is like the brain's threat detector. It makes you hypervigilant, intensely focused on scanning for danger signals both inside and out. Evolutionarily, that makes sense for survival, right?
Yeah, danger. Pay attention.
But mobilizing that network comes at a direct cost to the network we need for rational thought and planning. The Executive Control Network, ECN.
Wow.
Activity in the ECN goes down significantly during acute stress. And the ECN is vital for all that high-level stuff. Working memories, switching between tasks, planning, cognitive flexibility. Basically everything you need for creative problem solving and making balanced decisions.
Wow. So when I'm stuck in that worry spiral, my brain is literally taking the energy I need to find a smart solution and diverting it to just scanning for more threats.
You're essentially starving the part of your brain that could actually help you. Your system gets optimized for fight, flight, or freeze, not for innovation or nuanced thinking. And then there's the third network, the default mode network, DN. Its activity also tends to increase.
The default mode network.
Yeah.
That's usually linked to mind-wandering self-reflection, right?
It is. And increased DN activity during stress is often tied to more negative self-referential processing.
Yeah.
Basically, the brain gets preoccupied with thinking about itself, worrying about bad future outcomes, replaying past mistakes.
Rumination.
Exactly. The brain is kind of spinning its wheels internally, trying to manage the intense emotion, but it's consuming resources without producing any useful external results.
So this brain model gives us the hard evidence. Overthinking isn't just unhelpful, it's actively counterproductive at a neurological level. When we do that endless rehearsal, we trigger a system that steals resources away from the parts of the brain we need for clear thinking and creativity.
The whole cycle is clear now, isn't it? The positive meta-belief gets the spiral going. The resulting stress activates the salience and default mode networks. That suppresses the executive control network. The person feels mentally stuck, which just seems to confirm their initial fear that they can't cope or act decisively.
Yeah.
The only way to break it fundamentally is to change that relationship with the thought process itself. #outro.
So we've really taken apart the whole architecture of this illusion of productive worry. We've gone from the tiny psychological beliefs right up to the brain networks involved. And the core lesson seems crystal clear. The belief that our constant circular worrying is somehow a useful tool for controlling the future. It's just fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, the path towards actually being effective, towards creativity, towards finding some peace, it isn't about managing the content of every single worry. You don't have to convince yourself that the report is flawless or you'll never get sick.
Right.
It's about changing the relationship you have with the thinking process itself. It's about recognizing that worry is controllable and then actually empirically testing its supposed danger or usefulness using things like worry postponement or those behavioral experiments we talked about.
And once you shift that relationship, once you learn to step back and just observe the thought process instead of automatically getting swept up in the what-if cascade,
then you start to reclaim this huge amount of mental energy that was just being wasted on that unproductive internal rehearsal.
that reclamation feels like the key. It unlocks potential.
It really does. By proving to your own mind that the worry process isn't automatically dangerous or uncontrollable, you short-circuit that neurological stress response that was starving your executive control network. And that directly frees up your capacity for real, decisive action, for flexible thinking, for resilience. You replace the illusion of prudence with genuine strategic capability.